The Hadal Zone is the deepest layer of Earth's oceans, a region that begins at around 6,000 meters below sea level and plunges all the way to the very bottom of ocean trenches. It gets its name from Hades, the ancient Greek underworld. This is one of the most hostile environments on the planet. No sunlight, almost no food, crushing pressure that would collapse a submarine like an aluminum can. And yet life finds a way. Not just any life, strange life, alien life, life that has had millions of years to evolve in conditions so extreme that scientists are still struggling to understand how these creatures survive at all. Before we meet the creatures, we need to understand the world they live in. Because the Hadal Zone isn't just deep water, it's a completely different category of existence. The Hadal Zone is primarily found in ocean trenches, long, narrow cuts in the ocean floor formed by tectonic plates colliding or subducting beneath each other. The most famous of these is the Mariana Trench in the western Pacific Ocean, which contains the deepest known point on Earth, Challenger Deep, at approximately 10,935 meters below sea level. But there are dozens of other Hadal trenches scattered across the globe. The Tonga Trench, the Kermadec Trench, the Philippine Trench, the Puerto Rico Trench. Each one is its own isolated world, its own pocket of biological darkness. Pressure is what makes the Hadal Zone truly extraordinary as a habitat. In the deep ocean, pressure increases by roughly 1 atmosphere for every 10 meters of depth. At the bottom of the Mariana Trench, pressure reaches approximately 1,086 atmospheres, or over 15,000 pounds per square inch. A styrofoam cup lowered to those depths comes back the size of a thimble. The molecules in your body would be compressed until your cells simply stopped working. Your blood would behave differently. Your enzymes, the proteins that make your biochemistry run, would stop functioning entirely. And yet the creatures of the Hadal Zone thrive. The secret is a molecule called trimethylamine oxide, or TMAO. This compound stabilizes proteins under extreme pressure, preventing them from being crushed or deformed. Deep-sea creatures produce TMAO in quantities proportional to the depth they live at. Scientists have actually used TMAO concentrations as a kind of biological barometer to estimate how deep a creature lives. It is nature's own pressure suit, built right into the chemistry of the organism. There is also the question of food. The Hadal Zone receives no sunlight at all. That means no photosynthesis, no plants, no algae growing at depth. Everything that lives down there depends on what falls from above. A slow, constant drift of dead organic matter called marine snow, bits of dead organisms, fecal pellets, shed mucus, fragments of creatures from the layers above. It sounds unpleasant, but it is life-giving to the creatures of the abyss. And some of the animals we are about to meet have evolved extraordinary strategies to make the most of every single scrap that drifts into their world. Our first creature is not what you would expect from the deepest fish in the ocean. It does not have enormous fangs. It does not glow ominously. It does not look like a nightmare. It looks like a tadpole. Meet the Hadal snailfish, specifically species like Pseudoliparis weyeri and Pseudoliparis believi, the deepest living vertebrates ever recorded. These translucent, gelatinous fish has been filmed at depths exceeding 8,000 meters, well below what scientists once thought was the maximum possible depth for fish to survive. In 2023, a snailfish was filmed at approximately 8,336 meters in the Izu Ogasawara Trench, shattering depth records for fish entirely. They look almost fragile. Their bodies are pale, almost see-through, soft and floppy. But they are masters of the Hadal Zone in ways that are genuinely astonishing. First, that gelatinous body is an adaptation, not a weakness. Hard structures like bones and rigid tissues struggle under extreme pressure. A snailfish's body is largely made of water and soft tissue, which compresses uniformly under pressure and then expands back without damage. They essentially become one with the pressure rather than fighting it. Second, they are dominant predators at depth. Their primary prey is crustaceans, specifically amphipods. In the Hadal trenches, amphipods exist in almost unimaginable numbers, and snailfish have positioned themselves right at the top of this food web. Groups of them swarm bait dropped into the trenches, moving in coordinated feeding frenzies that appear almost social, remarkable for creatures in a world where finding a mate is already an evolutionary challenge. Third, the snailfish appear to have evolved a completely different form of the TMAO pressure adaptation molecule compared to shallow water relatives. Their biochemistry has been rewired at a fundamental level. Scientists studying Hadal snailfish are essentially studying a new chapter of vertebrate biology, one that might have implications for understanding life in extreme environments elsewhere in the universe. Amphipods are crustaceans, relatives of shrimp, crabs and lobsters. In shallow water, they are tiny, usually a few millimeters long. But in the Hadal Zone, thanks to a phenomenon called deep-sea gigantism, they grow enormous. Species like Alisella gigantea and Hirondella regularly reach lengths of 20 to 34 centimeters bigger than a grown adult's hand. Some specimens recorded exceed this. They are shrimp-like creatures the size of large rats, swarming the ocean floor in their tens of thousands, and they are ravenous. Hadal amphipods are scavengers extraordinaire. When any large piece of organic matter, a dead fish, a whale carcass, even a piece of wood, falls into a trench, amphipods can detect it from enormous distances and converge in feeding swarms with staggering speed. Researchers who have dropped bait cages into Hadal trenches have pulled them back up to find them packed with amphipods, hundreds, sometimes thousands of them, all writhing and feeding. The speed at which they strip flesh is remarkable. They are the cleanup crew of the deep, efficient, relentless, and absolutely everywhere. Alisella gigantea has been found with contaminants in its tissue, specifically polychlorinated biphenyls or PCBs, at concentrations among the highest ever measured in marine organisms. These are industrial pollutants that were banned decades ago, because amphipods eat everything that falls from above, and because the Hadal trenches act as convergence zones for ocean currents that funnel material downward. The pollution of the surface world has found its way into the deepest animals on the planet. The Dumbo octopus, genus Grimpoteuthis, is named for the ear-like fins that protrude from its mantle, which it flaps to propel itself through the water. The Dumbo octopus is one of the deepest living octopuses in the world, found at depths ranging from 1,000 to over 7,000 meters. It hovers above the seafloor like a ghostly kite, hunting worms, bivalves, and crustaceans. Unlike most octopuses, Dumbo octopuses swallow their prey whole. They do not have a radula, the rasping, teeth-like structure most cephalopods use to scrape and tear food. They cannot afford the energy. Instead, they engulf prey in a single gulp and let their slow digestive system do the rest. They also reproduce in a way that is unusual for cephalopods. Females carry eggs at various stages of development simultaneously, essentially always pregnant with the next clutch before the previous one hatches. In an environment as unpredictable as the deep sea, this is a hedging strategy. Keep the next generation going no matter what. Evolution in the Hadal Zone is not just about getting bigger or scarier. It is about getting perfectly suited to a world of darkness and pressure, even if that means becoming something that looks unlike anything else on Earth. The fang-toothed fish, Anaplogusta cornuta, has the largest teeth relative to body size of any fish in the ocean. Its fangs are so enormous that the fish literally cannot close its mouth completely. It has special sockets in its skull to accommodate the lower teeth when the jaw is shut. Its eyes are tiny and largely useless in the darkness. Its body is jet black. It is only about 16 centimeters long, but it is a precise expression of deep-sea predator evolution. The fang-tooth is not exclusively a Hadal animal. It ranges through the deep mesopelagic and bathypelagic zones. But it ventures into upper Hadal depths. It has stripped away everything unnecessary and kept only what matters: huge jaws, massive teeth, the ability to sense vibrations and bioluminescent light in absolute darkness. It preys on fish and crustaceans, using its enormous mouth to ensure that whatever it catches does not escape. In the deep sea, meals are rare and unpredictable. When food is found, it must be held. The fangtooth's anatomy is a perfect expression of that evolutionary pressure. It is a mouth with a body attached. The sea pig, also called scotoplanes, is a sea cucumber, a relative of sea stars and sea urchins that lives on the seafloor of the deep ocean, including Hadal depths. They look like inflated, translucent, pale creatures with little tube feet that they use to walk across the muddy floor. In some trawl samples from the deep ocean, sea pigs make up over 90% of the biomass collected. They are absolutely everywhere on the deep seafloor, moving in groups across the bottom, vacuuming up sediment and extracting whatever nutrition they can find. They navigate using chemical cues, moving uphill across the seafloor toward the source of fresh food falls. When a whale carcass hits the bottom, sea pigs can detect it and move toward it in enormous numbers. They are sometimes found inside large food sources, burrowed into decaying material, feeding from within. Certain species of parasitic crustaceans attach themselves specifically to sea pigs, living on or inside their bodies, using them as a mobile home, a feeding platform, and the means of transportation through the deep. The abyss has parasites with parasites. When a whale dies and its massive carcass sinks to the ocean floor, an event called a whale fall, it creates an entire temporary ecosystem that can sustain life for decades. Zombie worms, genus Ocedax, are among the final specialists that feed on the remaining lipid-rich bones. Ocedax are small, feathery worms that have no mouth, no stomach, and no digestive system. Instead, they drill into whale bones using specialized root-like structures and rely on symbiotic bacteria living inside those roots to break down the bone's collagen and lipids. They outsource their digestion entirely to microbes embedded in their own tissue. Virtually all visible Ocedax worms are female. The males are microscopic, and dozens to hundreds of them live inside the female's body in a primitive larval state, doing nothing but producing sperm. They are, in every biological sense, a component of their mate's anatomy. Scientists initially did not realize males existed until they looked inside the females. Zombie worms were only discovered in 2002 in Monterey Bay, California. Before that, we had no idea they existed. The question that follows is obvious. How many other creatures like them are down there, waiting to be found? The barley fish Macropina microstoma has a completely transparent head. The entire dome of its skull is made of a clear, fluid-filled shield through which its internal structures are visible, including its eyes, which are tubular, glowing green, and can rotate to look upward through the top of its own head. For years, scientists thought the barley's eyes always pointed forward, because when specimens were brought to the surface, the pressure change caused the transparent dome to collapse, obscuring the true eye structure. It was only through in-situ remotely operated vehicle footage that researchers realized these eyes look straight up when the fish is hunting. The barley survives in part by stealing food from siphonophores, long colonial jellyfish-like creatures that trailed tentacles through the water column, trapping small animals. The barley watches upward for the silhouettes of prey caught in siphonophore tentacles, then carefully maneuvers in and steals them, apparently tolerant of the stinging cells. The green pigment in its eyes may filter out ambient light to better detect bioluminescence, making it a precision instrument for hunting in the dark. It is a fish that evolved a biological periscope embedded in a transparent skull. Siphonophores are colonial organisms, meaning each individual is actually a colony of thousands of genetically identical zooids, each one specialized for a different function. Some zooids handle movement, some handle feeding, some handle reproduction, some handle defense. None of them can survive alone. Together, they form a superorganism. Deep sea species are far more complex than their shallow water relatives. Species like Praia dubia can reach lengths of 40 to 50 meters, making them potentially the longest animals on Earth. They drift through the deep water, trailing curtains of stinging tentacles that can stretch for dozens of meters in every direction. Anything that swims into that invisible curtain, fish, shrimp, even squid, is paralyzed and consumed. Many siphonophores are bioluminescent. In the darkness of the deep sea, they have been filmed producing cascading waves of blue light, possibly for communication within the colony itself. Parts of the superorganism signaling to other parts. A colony-wide nervous system flickering with light in absolute darkness. Expeditions to Hadal depths are extraordinarily expensive and technically difficult. The first time humans physically reached the bottom of Challenger Deep was in 1960, with Don Walsh and Jacques Piccard aboard the Bathyscaphe Trieste. They spent only about 20 minutes on the bottom, just long enough to observe flatfish and shrimp moving through the sediment, before their descent stirred up a blinding cloud of sediment, and they had to ascend. Since then, a small number of crewed and uncrewed vehicles have made the journey. Each time, they find something new. Species that have never been described. Behaviors that have never been observed. In 2020, footage from the Five Deeps expedition captured entirely new species of sea cucumber moving across the Hadal floor. In the Tonga Trench, researchers found bacterial mats covering the seafloor, sheets of microbial life forming a living carpet. In the Kermadec Trench, snailfish of previously unknown species were filmed and collected. Scientists estimate that we have directly explored less than 0.01% of the Hadal Zone in detail. Less than 1/100%, the vast majority of the deepest places on Earth have never been seen by human eyes or cameras. There could be organisms of extraordinary complexity, of genuinely novel body plans, of biological strategies we have no framework to understand yet. We also know that human pollution has already reached the deepest places on Earth. PCBs in amphipods at 10,000 meters, microplastics in sediment samples from Challenger Deep. The fingerprint of human civilization pressed into the deepest, most remote ecosystems on the planet. We have not explored these places, but we have already changed them. Understanding the Hadal Zone requires continued investment, continued curiosity, and continued care, because down there, in the cold and the dark and the crushing silence, something extraordinary is happening, something ancient and alive, something that has survived every mass extinction, every climate shift, every ice age in the last 65 million years. The Hadal Zone has been evolving in isolation, under conditions we cannot easily replicate, for longer than our species has existed, and we have only just begun to look.